Okay, Nalini, is that everybody in from the waiting room? Thank you so much. Okay. Esther, could you just let me know if my screen's still visible?
Yes, can see it well, thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. It's going to be a really engaging and interesting session. And I know Joanna has got lots of insights that she's desperate to share with everybody, and that everyone will come away with a lot to think about and a lot to reflect on. Just before we begin, a few housekeeping bits. Please keep your microphones on mute while Joanna is going through her presentation. There will be lots of time for questions at the end. And please make sure that if you are uncomfortable being recorded, you have your cameras off, as the session will be recorded for anyone who wasn't able to attend today. Now, before we dive into your presentation, Joanna, I just wondered if you could talk us through a little bit. What was the motivation for your kind leadership work that you've been doing and the book that you've written? What was the inspiration behind the journey that you've been on?
The inspiration, I would say, and it sounds negative, but it isn't. It's turning a negative into a positive. Somebody put something on LinkedIn recently that said, so many people have inspired me to be nothing like them. And I think, if I'm being very honest with everybody, my kind leadership journey came from bad experience. So I experienced unkindness in the workplace, which actually it breaks my heart, because to me, school should be the happiest place in the world. And I think for me, experiencing toxic workplaces, bullying in staff rooms, really made me look back and think, what can we do to stop this happening? We would never want it for the children in our schools, but it's happening to adults as well. And what can we do to make that better for everybody?
Okay, I think that a lot of people can probably empathize with that experience and have maybe had those experiences within education or within other professions that they've worked in. So we're going to get started. I'm going to hand over to you. I know we're all really looking forward to hearing what you have to say. So over to you now.
Thanks, Ruby. I have to give a huge thank you to Ruby as well for being my glamorous assistant, because she's in charge of slides. So thank you, Ruby. So just to introduce myself, I am Joanna. I'm the principal of Wales International School and the author of Kind Leadership. I'm a little bit of an old lady, so Ruby's looking after the technological things for me. I'm very grateful. Thank you. I also have ADHD, so I might get a little bit distracted and go off on a tangent, but I'm on a tight schedule of 30 minutes, so I apologise in advance. Thanks, Ruby. So the first thing that I'd like you to do is just take a moment. What I'd really like everybody to do as I'm speaking is just reflect. You know, you're not going to hear anything new at all in what you hear today. Everybody knows what kindness is, what you should be doing, but I just want you to reflect and think, are you actually doing it? So if you just take a moment to think, for you, we don't have to share anything, but what does kindness mean to you? And as I'm talking, everything that I say, I'd like you to reflect on you, how you feel about kindness, and what you think you are doing and what you could do to make yourself an even kinder leader than I hope you already are. Thanks, Ruby. So the first thing that I wanted to start with is, there are so many misconceptions about kindness. And when I wrote the book, the first sentence that I started with is actually a quote from Al Capone, which is, "Don't mistake my kindness for weakness." And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions that you come across in thinking about kind leadership. Kind leadership is anything but weak. It takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength. And something that I also hear is, it's going to make you burn out. If you're constantly being kind, if you're always being like this, then you will burn out emotionally. And again, that's a misconception, because if you are a kind leader, you need to put boundaries in place to protect yourself and to protect other people. This is one of my favourite ones that's going to make you laugh now. 2 years ago, I presented at the COBIS conference and about kind leadership, and beforehand, people could ask questions on the app. This one really made me angry. Is it a woman thing? No, it's not a woman thing. There is nothing genetic about being kind. There is absolutely nothing that means that women are more kind than men or vice versa. And I always say to people, being honest, one of the unkindest experiences I think I had from a leader was from a woman. And some of the kindest experiences I've had have been from men. So it doesn't discriminate according to anything, race, gender, age. It doesn't discriminate to be kind. The other one that came up in the COBIS conference with the questions that came up was, if you are kind, you'll have low standards and there's no accountability. Absolutely not. And I'll talk about that later on. The other one, we'll hear this for everything. That won't work for me, or that won't work in my school. I promise you it does. This again comes to boundaries, the next one, which is people think it's not worth being kind if it's not reciprocated. And my response to that would be, if you are continually modeling kindness, it becomes the culture of your school. And, you know, at first it might not be reciprocated, but eventually, if you proceed with it, if you persevere, then it will become part of the culture of your school. And the final one I want to spend a little bit more time on the next slide on is kindness is being nice. And that's a huge misconception. Thank you, Ruby. So there is a huge difference between being kind and being nice. And what I would say is people confuse it because on a surface level, it looks like you're being polite, you're being agreeable, but it isn't that at all. And for me, I'm not going to read the slide to you, you can read it for yourselves, but nice tends to be there to protect people's feelings or to protect yourself because you don't want to be disliked. So you're protecting either yourself or other people. It's about keeping the peace. It can be about avoiding conflict. Kind protects the future and it leads to long-term growth in your schools. And it might seem at first like you have to have difficult conversations, you have to feel a little bit uncomfortable, and the actions might not be perceived by people as pleasant. But I promise you, if you continue with being kind, then it is transformational in schools. Thanks, Ruby. So what I did was I wanted to put something together and I started about, oh my goodness, 2 years ago. Like I say, I wanted to think of a way to put in words what kindness actually means and how you can be kind as a leader. And I'm still a teacher at heart and I need something to remember things by. So I decided to go with Simon Sinek, bless him, in Start With Why, says that you can chase happiness. And I thought, well, you can't get better than Simon, can you? If you can chase happiness, you can chase kindness. And as I thought about it, driving past a petrol station on my way to work, I thought, hold on a minute, CHASE as an acronym really works with what I'm trying to say to people. So I created a framework so that people can remember it easily and that they can think about how it all interlinks together. So C is communication, and that means communication with kindness and clarity. H is honesty. A is the very important accountability. S is self-esteem, and E is ego awareness. Now, some of you may have watched a podcast that I did with the lovely Kai last year and have seen that initially S stood for shame, because I think shame is a very important aspect of leadership, not to shame people. And when I gave the draft of the book to the publisher, they said, no, you can't have shame. It's too negative. You need to switch it into something that's got a more positive aspect. So I rewrote the chapter on shame. I did keep it in there because I think shame is really important to talk about. But S is now self-esteem. Thank you. So we're going to start with communication. As I'm talking, what I would like you to think about is experiences that you've had. And I am going to tell you a story about the gentleman that you can see on the screen. Something that I want you to think about is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind before you speak? And that gentleman on the screen is my art teacher, Mr. Court. Mr. Court, when I was in year 7, did not know this, that all I had ever wanted to be was an artist. So my dad is an artist and that was all I ever wanted to be all the way through primary school. Even in maths lessons, I would draw little cartoons. I probably drove the teachers mad, but I would draw little cartoons. I wanted to be an artist. And in year 7, I went to a village primary school, went to my first day, and there was only me and one other girl in the class that had gone to the same school. So everybody in my class was a new person that I didn't know. So we did, I think people still do this now. We had to get a training shoe and put it in the middle of the table. And he said, draw that shoe. Now I drew what I thought was the best shoe in the universe. And he came up behind me and he went, oh, Joanna, that's an unusual surname. And I said, yeah, yeah. And he said, your dad's not called Wilf, is he? And I said, yeah. And he went, your dad's an artist. And I said, he is. And he went, oh my goodness, I know your dad's work. He's absolutely amazing. Well, your dad must know Ridley Scott. And I said, yeah, yeah, yeah. They went to art college together. And he went, oh my goodness, your dad's amazing. And I could feel my self-esteem, my ego inflating. And then he said the immortal words that I have never recovered from, which were, you don't take after your father, do you? Now, as an adult, I can look back at that and think maybe he was being funny, maybe, just cracking a joke. But I put my pencil down and I have never, ever drawn again. I do not know if I can draw. I don't, because every single art lesson, I just drew really quickly. Even now with the kids in school, if I have to draw something on the board, they all start laughing because I do stick people and make a funny drawing, because I have totally, utterly lost my confidence because of some communication that was given to me when I was 11 years old. I'm sure you can sit here now and think of something that somebody has said to you when you were a child that has impacted on you. I can also tell you stories of things that have happened in my professional career where people have said things to me. And again, that damages your confidence and your self-esteem. Communication needs to be clear, but it also needs to be done with compassion. Maybe Mr. Court could have said to me, that's a great first attempt. You're only in year 7. We can work together to make you even better than you already are. But instead, his communication made me give up. Thinking about how to communicate with people in leadership is a really vital thing that we do. It's not just the words as well. It can be the look on your face. It can be timing. It can be silence. Sometimes if you don't respond to something, your silence can speak volumes as well. And something that I always say to people is the place in which you communicate and how you communicate is essential as a leader too. Don't send an email that should have been a conversation. Similarly, and vice versa. Think about where you do things. I am terrible for being caught in a corridor, which I'm sure lots of leaders in schools are. It's okay to say, I'm sorry, I can't talk now. You don't have to answer immediately. You don't have to communicate what you're thinking at that moment in time. It's perfectly okay to say, make an appointment and come and see me later. Or the other thing that, again, is something that I feel strongly about is sometimes you need to take a step back and reflect before you communicate. And my team would tell you that I'm wicked for saying, I need to sleep on this. I don't, but it's my way of saying, I need to stop and I need to think. And my husband's a classroom teacher, which is a wonderful thing to be as a principal because I see it all. So I see the stresses of the marking, the exam times, parents' evenings, open days from a teacher's perspective. And sometimes he will sit there and I go home and he's marking, and he'll say to me, there you are, principal of a school, and you're just sitting there. Here I am working. And I say to him, I'm thinking, because I haven't had time to think during the day. I just need that time just to sit and to decompress. And there's nothing wrong in doing that before you communicate. So we'll move on to the next one because I'm conscious of the time. So the next one is honesty. You might recognize the lady who is on the photograph there. That is a lady called Belinda Carlisle, who is my daughter's godmother. That's my youngest daughter there. And Belinda taught me something very important about honesty, because I used to be the queen of little white lies. I was being nice and not being kind, in thinking that I didn't want to hurt people's feelings. And the story that I've told in the book happened with Belinda, and she really did modify how I thought about things, because what happened was there was a particular lady. We used to go every Friday afternoon for a coffee, and our kids are the same age, and they used to head off somewhere and we'd sit and have a coffee. And this particular lady used to walk past and say, oh, hi, Joanna, do you fancy going out for a coffee tomorrow? The truth was I didn't. But what I would say is, oh, I am so sorry. I can't do tomorrow. I've got a doctor's appointment, another time. All of this time, Belinda was watching, and she would go, oh, okay, and walk away. Maybe another time, a couple of weeks later, she would come up and say, would you like to go for lunch on Sunday? And I go, oh, can't do Sunday. My husband's away and I need to look after the kids. And she'd be like, you can bring the kids with you. Oh, I think they've got a swimming lesson, so I won't be able to come, because I thought I was hurting this person's feelings by not saying no, thank you. And then one day Belinda turned to me and she said, why do you do that? And I said, what do you mean? She said, you're a liar. And I said, no, 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 I'm not lying. And I'm saying something nice to her. And she said, no, no, no. What you don't realize is I am hearing you lie. I know that you haven't got a doctor's appointment. I know that you haven't got a swimming lesson. And now every time you say to me, sorry, I can't do Friday afternoon because ... I'm not going to believe you, because you have lost credibility, because I have heard you lie to somebody else. And when she said it, I thought, oh my goodness, she is so right. And I realized I was doing it in my professional life as well. So to not hurt somebody's feelings, I would say, they'd be like, oh, can we leave early? The answer's no. And it would be, oh, well, there's a reason. And I would say something to cushion the blow, which again links to the communication. It's not healthy, because your team will lose trust in you because you will be caught out in a lie. And one of my favourite stories from recently was a colleague who, I understand why she did it. She was in a shopping mall here, and one of our parents saw her and said, I would really like to take you out for lunch to say thank you for being a wonderful teacher. Now, what she could have said is, I'm sorry, I'm not allowed to do that because we're not allowed to socialise with parents. I really appreciate it, but we're not allowed, it's school policy. But instead, what she said was, oh, I'm so sorry, we've already eaten, thank you so much, another time. Imagine her horror when later on during the day, she'd gone with her husband for a meal and was sitting eating as this parent came in and watched what was happening. You've immediately lost credibility. There is nothing wrong with saying no and communicating that with honesty, but with kindness, if that makes sense. So I'm going to ask Ruby to flick to the next one. The next one is accountability. And if I thought there was something that was the most important in the Chase framework, I think everything centers around accountability. And what I wanted to say was, for me, accountability isn't just for staff, it's for yourself as well, and to hold yourself accountable. But it's also not about blaming other people and taking ownership of you being held accountable. So the lady who you can see on there is a lady who is a head teacher in Spain called Dawn Acurek. She works for the King's School in Murcia. And years ago, she really made me think a lot about accountability, because I wasn't a very kind person. So I've put in the book, and people quite often pick up on this sentence, that I'm not naturally kind. I am a massive perfectionist and I expect a lot from people, and I've really had to learn to be kind. And Dawn helped me in that through accountability. So I would say, this needs doing and it needs doing by tomorrow. And Dawn would say, people can't do it for tomorrow. And I'd be like, yeah, you can. You can just work till 10 o'clock at night and you can get it done and it's absolutely fine and they can do it quickly. And she used to say to me, no, they can't. You can. And not everybody's like you. And that really made me think about how important it is to hold people to account through expectations, but to support people to get there. So being kind and holding people to account is having high expectations and high challenge, but always making sure that you can support the people in your team to reach those expectations by holding both them and yourself accountable. And I think about Paul Dix in his book, When the Adults Change, gave me a phrase that I always remember, which is, whatever you walk past, you accept. And you need to make sure that you challenge people if you're not seeing what your expectation is, but also that has to be done with fairness. And I think that again comes into being a kind leader with accountability. it's very easy to, particularly in international schools, to form friendships with people in teams and to have people who, you think they do a great job, and you need to make sure that your team are held to account with fairness and that everybody is treated and held to the same accountability in terms of expectations. You absolutely cannot have favorites. And the other one that I would say is, don't ever blame your boss. Keep yourself accountable. So many times I've been in rooms with people where they've passed the blame onto somebody else. So I'll give you an example. When I first started in the school that I'm working in now, an incident had happened the year before, and somebody had blamed the owner of the school. It wasn't. It wasn't. And then when I started in the school, everybody was saying, "Oh, well, you're going to change your mind about this. You're going to make sure that we can do this again because you're the new principal." And I said, "Sorry, it's not going to happen." And I caught somebody say, "Oh, it's the owner." And I said, "Can I stop you there? It isn't. This is my decision. It's not him. This is me." And I think, again, when you're thinking about accountability, it's not just about holding people to account, it's owning your own responsibilities and not passing the blame and holding yourself to account too. I'm going to ask lovely Ruby. Self-esteem. So the person on the photograph is me. That is my first ever school photo. My mum hates that photo with a passion. So my mum sent me to school looking immaculate. She had sent me there with a brand new, beautiful red jumper. My shirt was pressed, my hair had been curled. I was absolutely perfect. What she hadn't accounted for was that on that day, when the photographers were in, we had PE. Now, I'm a 1970s girl, and PE in the 1970s meant you took everything off and you ran around in the hall in your vest and knickers. That photograph is after I dressed myself, after PE had finished. It was also after lunch. And if you look closely, you can see there's an orange dot, which I believe was my lunch. Now, I have to explain something in that in my background, that photograph speaks volumes because my mum wanted to have the pristine person who looked perfect in the photographs that everybody would look at and say, what a perfect example of the mother having got her ready. Everybody looked at it and said, look at that scruffy kid. So that photograph for my mother massively damaged her self-esteem because she was the mother of the scruffy kid. And I think you don't know, everybody's got a chip on their shoulder. If you met my mum, you would have absolutely no idea that that photograph, as the children say, triggers her because it makes her feel like she didn't do a good job as a mother. She did. It wasn't her fault. But for her, she has a chip on her shoulder. My husband won't mind me telling you, he has a chip on his shoulder because he comes from the Wirral. He did not leave home to go to university. He went to university in Liverpool. And he still feels conscious of the fact that he did not leave home when he went to university, and he's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder about it. You don't know what baggage people are carrying with them. It can be anything. It can be their background. It can be maybe which university they went to. It can be colour of people's skin. It can be whether they're a man or a woman. But self-esteem and the baggage that people carry with them is really important to be aware of in your staff, also in you, because how you respond in leadership can differ depending on, as I say, like I say, the kids use the word triggering. If your self-esteem's not in a healthy place, you can respond in a way that perhaps isn't kind. And similarly, when you are dealing with staff, we do it for the children. It fascinates me in education that we spend so long talking about the children, and rightly so. Rightly so. The kids are at the centre of everything. But we do things to adults that we would never tolerate in doing with children. And building self-esteem in your team is a definite part of kind leadership. And then this one, this is the one that started it. Ah, ego. If I was to do a PhD, the title of my PhD is The Ego of the Head Teacher. And I am quite sure that every single person who's in the room could send me a story that I could include in my PhD, because ego is incredibly dangerous. Now, there's nothing wrong inherently with having an ego. If you keep your ego checked, that's absolutely fine. But what happens is quite regularly in leadership is people surround themselves with yes people. And as you rise in the ranks of leadership, what can happen is everybody keeps telling you how wonderful they are. You're great. Everything's wonderful. If you don't have healthy professional dialogue because your ego's gone out of control, everybody keeps telling you that everything that you do is right. And it goes to people's heads. And you will find that people start taking credit for other people's work. They won't delegate because they think they're better at doing it than other people would be. And the most dangerous thing, like I say, is just surrounding yourself with people who don't challenge you. If you are doing that, then your ego has gone out of control. Have a real think and reflect about it. Would be really easy, if I walk down the corridor to our 3-year-olds, they all go, Miss Joanna, I love you. You're so beautiful. Oh, I love you so much. It would go to your head because you're constantly being told you're so wonderful. So just be aware that ego is really, really dangerous in leadership because it stops you from making rational decisions and from treating people kindly. Thanks, Ruby. I could spend half an hour talking about that. The most important thing for me in being kind is thinking about what will your legacy be. And I started with the quote from Al Capone, and I wanted to use this with you because it's actually a bigger quote than people usually say. I did a lot of research into this, and actually, Al Capone was really kind to people he liked. So Al Capone started soup kitchens in Chicago for people that didn't have any food in the Depression in America. People would go to him and ask for help for their families, and he would help. So in his mind, he was kind, but that's not what his legacy is. So for us, his legacy was he was a gangster, he was a tax evader, he killed people, he was put into Alcatraz. For us, his legacy is one of fear and one of horrendous behavior, but he thought that he was kind. So if you don't mind going to the next slide. Thanks, Ruby. Al Capone's legacy was not one of kindness, but the 3 people that you can see on there is, and the point that I wanted to make was, it's about being balanced and making sure that your kindness outweighs. We're all going to make mistakes. We will have days where we're not particularly kind. Maybe we snap at people, something's going on at home. So Mahatma Gandhi, obviously we all know him as, the leader of peaceful protest, effecting change through peace, through being a kind person. He made the most awful comments on a trip to South Africa, which nowadays we would say would have him cancelled. They were racist, but nobody thinks about that. We think of him in terms of being this kind, peaceful person. Princess Diana, Queen of People's Hearts, compassionate, charity work, helping get rid of landmines, really making people think about the homeless population. Oh, bless her, she had her problems and she made mistakes, and we all watched it happen in front of our very eyes. But that's not what we remember about her. We remember her as being kind. And Martin Luther King, my goodness, I have a dream. We all think about the work that he did for the civil rights movement. His poor wife, God bless her, he had a history of committing adultery. And more recently, there's a book that's been released that says that in actual fact, they have evidence that he plagiarized his PhD. But that's not what we think about him. So what I'm saying to you is none of us are perfect. We all have flaws. But would you rather be remembered like Al Capone? Or would you rather be remembered in the way that the 3 people who are on the screen are remembered? Because the balance that we can have by making the mistakes, own your mistakes, and be remembered for being kind. I'm going to ask Ruby to flick for me. So, chase kindness, communicate with kindness and clarity, H for honesty, accountability, self-esteem, and ego. And I just want to finish with one thing. I've gone 2 minutes over, sorry. I just want to finish with one thing. When I wrote the book, I did the draft, and before I sent it to the publisher, I gave it to my husband. I said, read through this and tell me what you think. And he read it and he went, "You've missed something." And I said, "Oh, okay, what have I missed?" And he went, "You've missed a chapter." And I said, "I haven't. I've done an introduction, I've done the theory, I've done CHASE, then I've done a bit about legacy, and then I've done a conclusion." And he said, "No, you've missed a chapter." And he said, "I knew you'd do this." And I said, "What do you mean?" Be kind to yourself. Please be kind to yourself, because you will not be able to be a kind leader unless the first person that you look after is yourself. And I'll finish with one story that I always think of to illustrate this. I used to work in France, and we had a particularly difficult parent. And on the Thursday before we broke up for a holiday for the winter, my secretary came in at the end of the day and she said, "Oh, just to let you know, Mrs. Thompson's going to come in tomorrow at 8 o'clock." And I went, "Why? What does she want?" And she went, "I don't know. She just said she wants to see you at 8 o'clock tomorrow." I did not sleep all night for worrying about what Mrs. Thompson wanted to see me about. And I lay in bed going, "Oh, she won't be happy about this. If she says this, I'm going to say that. Then if she says that, I'm going to say the other." I genuinely had no sleep for churning over the conversations that I was going to have with Mrs. Thompson and what she would say and what I would respond with. So the next morning, 8 o'clock came and Elizabeth came in and she said, "She's here." I can remember, and one of the things that I talk about in the book is physical reactions to things. I can remember taking a deep breath, sitting up and going, "Come on, Joanna, you can do this," and going. I walked out of the door to see Mrs. Thompson standing with a huge bouquet of flowers, the biggest box of chocolates I've ever seen in my life. And she said, "Thank you for everything that you do for my son." I had not slept for a box of chocolates and a bunch of flowers. Life is not worth that worry. And my tip, if something like that happens, is pick up the phone. If you're going to stress about it, just pick her up and say, "Look, before you come to the meeting tomorrow, everything all right?" And I would have slept that night. And I think there's all these phrases about, put your own oxygen mask on first, and, you can't pour from an empty cup. And it really is true. So please be kind to yourself. Please be kind to others. And I promise you, if you chase kindness and not perfection, because nothing is perfect, the way that you treat other people will define who you are and the legacy that you leave in your leadership. Thank you. And that's the book. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joanna. I bet everyone was like me and just reflecting on all their experiences and how the things that you were saying, they really are universal, and I'm sure lots of us can relate to them in different ways. Like I said at the beginning, there will be some time for questions, so please feel free to write your questions in the chat, or if you want to put your microphone on and ask a question, Joanna obviously would be more than happy to answer. While people are just thinking of their questions, I just wanted to hear a little bit from you about when you were putting these things into practice in your school and in your leadership. Was there any bit of the Chase framework that you found harder to implement than others, or that you needed to spend more time on?
I would say they're all equal and they're all interchangeable as well. And I think it takes time. It honestly doesn't happen overnight. And I've been doing this gradually, like I say, for the last 2 years. And then we really sort of stepped on the gas this academic year from August. And so the introductory meeting with staff, we went through the Chase framework. We have it around the school. We actually implement it for parents as well. So I'll tell you, I had a difficult meeting with a parent the other week. And in my office, I don't think you can see, I think you can just see the outline of the blue behind. So I've got a poster that has the Chase framework on. And this dad came in screaming, shouting. And I said to him, "Could I just stop you? I really appreciate the fact that you're being honest. I really appreciate the fact that you're holding the school to account, but your communication's not being very kind. Could you please lower your voice?" And he went, "Oh, I'm so sorry." So even our parents understand about the Chase framework. And I think if you need any evidence of how far it's come in the school, like I say, it did take time. We do every Friday, I do something called Picnic with the Principal, where the kids are nominated to come to we sit down, they have some juice and a little cookie. And I say to them, I always ask the same questions. I've been doing it for 4 years now. And I always say to them, You know, how long have you been in the school? What's your favourite subject? What do you want to do when you grow up? What's really great about the school? And what could we do to make the school even better than it already is? And Ruby, our media lady, does a little video at the end, and she says to them, why do you love Wales International School? And the kids do a video, and about 3 months ago it started happening. All the kids come from the age of 3 all the way up to 18. And when they say, why do you love the school? Everybody's kind. My friends are kind, the teachers are kind, and it really warms my heart that the children feel it as well as the adults.
That leads really nicely onto Lindsay's question in the chat. Thank you, Lindsay. She said, is it something that you share and teach with the children explicitly? Or like you were saying, is that something that they just pick up on? Or is kindness something that you plan for in your curriculum and you make explicit sort of teaching points around?
Combination of the both, because I think you can put things in the curriculum, but it doesn't necessarily go in, and it doesn't mean that you're doing it. They need to see it modelled. And I think that's genuinely sort of happening within the school. And I think when people come, they comment on, oh, what a lovely school, everybody's so lovely and kind. And I think we do it explicitly. So obviously we do assemblies, we do work in PSHE. Our behaviour is particularly in the younger years, and the kids quote it to me. It's sometimes I forget, and they go, we've got kind words, kind hands, because you know what children are like. Sometimes they'll take something or they'll hit somebody on the arm or whatever, and it's like, that's not kind hands. Or if somebody says something horrible to somebody, we'll go, that's not kind words. You have to do. And sometimes the kids will say to me, kind words, kind hands. I'm like, okay, thank you. It's like, because I'll forget and I'll go, you shouldn't have done that. But then they go, kind words. Kind words. They go, right, thank you. But again, it's sort of taken the time to, yes, it's within the curriculum about kindness, and it is a value that we have. Obviously, we have a lot of Islamic values in the school because we're 91% Emirati in the school. So we talk about it a lot, but it's modelling it as well.
Yeah, it's that day-to-day weaving in of it that's really important, isn't it? So we had a question from Sharish, and she said that you talked a little bit in the very beginning of your presentation about sometimes people thinking that kindness is a woman thing, but that we, have all probably met women in our lives who don't display those kind behaviors. And she said, do you think there is any link between that and female leaders maybe trying to be more masculine? Where do you sort of think this sometimes nastiness can come from within women in leadership?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think there's a stereotype of what women should be like, the kind, nurturing, lovely mummy figure. And then there's a stereotype of what men should be, which is the assertive, dominant person. And that's not true at all. We shouldn't have any stereotypes of what anybody's like. But I think what happens is, because of the stereotype of what a leader should be, is this assertive, very dominant person. That's what people feel like they have to be. And I put in the book, in the introduction, when I think back about when I was learning about leadership, Margaret Thatcher was held up as the person who was the woman as a leader. There wasn't any kindness that, she was known as the Iron Lady. And the other person who was a global leader was the Queen. Well, she was hardly somebody who came across as being sort of empathetic. She was very stoic, and, you would see, and again, to quote back to Princess Diana, the difference between, the Queen would meet people and sort of stand back, and her security guard every now and then she might take flowers. There wasn't any hugging or anything going on. So I think for me, it's this stereotype of what you need to be like as assertive and dominant. And in my first year of teaching, it was NQT in those days, we were sent on a course to learn how to be assertive. And I remember saying to my husband, what do I need to go on an assertiveness training course for? And he went, no, you do, because you're aggressive. And I went, what? And he said, you need to tone it down. You're aggressive. You need to be assertive and not. And I didn't understand what the difference was, but that's my personality. And I think sometimes it's people's personality. And like I say, I'm not a naturally kind person. I've had to learn to be less aggressive and to treat people with kindness. And the same goes the other way. And I totally agree. I think sometimes people get this idea of, this is how I need to be. And sorry, I'll close with this one. I was talking to somebody the other week, and he said he had a friend who had been the nicest person you could ever meet. Lovely man, great laugh, really kind, very generous, really lovely person. He might have become an inspector for a particular group in the UK, that work for the government that begin with an O. And he said he absolutely changed overnight, suddenly became the most horrible person, really judgmental, really sad. And he said he couldn't understand how this lovely person who'd been a wonderful head teacher, kind leader, went into the role of being an inspector and suddenly became this very hard line person. And again, it goes back to people thinking that they need to behave in that way, and they don't. There's nothing wrong with inspection frameworks. It's how they're delivered, and you can deliver them with kindness.
I had another question here that is a little bit about what advice would you sort of give to younger leaders or teachers who are working in places where kindness is sort of viewed as a weakness? You talked about kindness sometimes being viewed as a weakness, or the existing culture is a little bit unkind.
If you want me to come in and talk to your school, I'll do it for free. Honestly, I tell you now, it kind of breaks my heart. I won't charge money for anything to do. I've been to several schools in the UAE. I've been talking to people in Hong Kong. I've been talking to people in the UK. I do a book club in the UAE. I do a book club in the UK as well, and I'm starting one in Hong Kong in August. Every time somebody approaches me and says, "Please, will you talk to, like, can you do something in a conference?" And they go, "How much?" And I go, "What do you mean, how much?" And they're like, "No, how much do you charge?" And I'm going, "Nothing, nothing." The reason I want to do this is to try to get more kindness out in the world. You don't make any money from books. I don't charge anybody to talk at conferences or to speak in anything in a webinar or anything. I just want the world to be kinder. And I think all you can do is try to explain to people what kindness is. If you are not in a school that values professional dialogue, where you're not able to do that, get out, because it's not healthy. And I say to people genuinely, Esther's worked with me. Esther knows me. She knows what I'm like. You have to have professional dialogue, and anybody in my school can come to me. Somebody did it the other day. He said, "Can I give you some feedback?" And I said, "Yeah." And he gave me some feedback, and I went, "Okay." And I went, "Actually, do you know what? He's right." And I changed what I did. I do not have a little black book where I went, "Oh, he came on this day and I'm going to write down that." It shouldn't be like that. Anybody can come and give you feedback anytime. And if you're not able to speak openly about, maybe we could deal with this differently, if you shut down when that happens, that's usually because of somebody's ego. And if you're not able to facilitate that change, then maybe look for another job, I would say. Sorry.
So, sort of following on from that, obviously, from your point of view as a leader, you talk about how your staff have taken it on and how they're now at a point where they're comfortable coming to give that sort of feedback that you've said. But was that kind of the case straight away, or were
No.
there people who were not very on board? And how did you get that unified culture? Because as we all know as leaders, sometimes implementing a change on paper, it looks like it's going to be brilliant, but when you come to practice, there are some people who resist or some people who aren't on board. What did you find when you were raising the profile of kindness, and how did you tackle any sort of barriers that came up?
Think you're never going to get everybody. You're never going to have everybody on board, but then sometimes you have to listen. I put it in the book. You do have to listen to the people who moan as well, because sometimes they've got a valid point. So sometimes you do have to take on board what people say. I would say, like I said before, it takes time and also perseverance and modeling it consistently. And I'm really lucky because my SLT are fab. So we're all on the same page, and we all work in the same way with as far as kindness is concerned. Sometimes you can make a decision as well and people don't understand that, that is a kind decision. Sometimes you have to make unpopular decisions, but it's done for the greater good of the school and for kindness overall. I think as well, it's giving people a forum to speak. And many years ago, I read a book called Zap the Art of Leadership. And in there it said, I can't say the word because it's rude. In every organization, you will have 5 people who are pioneers. They want your school or organization to succeed. They will support you. They will really want the best for your organization. And you'll have 5, it's a rude word, so I can't say it. You will have 5 people who don't. And those people will be a thorn in your side, and they will be negative, and they will criticize, and nothing you will do will be right. And they will want your school to fail. If you didn't do very well and something went wrong, they'd be over the moon. Every single person in the middle is just a sheep. So what you need to do is harness your pioneers. So you get those 5 people and you make them the loudest voice so that your sheep follow them. And one of the things that we did 2 years ago was I started every Thursday morning before school. I call it the Pioneers Focus Group. And I said, if you're interested in making changes in the school, moving the school forward, if you want to be a pioneer, you come, and it is open to everybody. TAs, the bus drivers can come, security, admin, any single person in our school who wants the school to flourish is welcome to come. Our most active members are actually our admin department, our registrar. She's like, I'm a pioneer, everything. And so what we do is we start every Thursday morning, it's 30 minutes. We do just go around the room, tell me one positive thing that happened in the week. And it takes maybe 5-10 minutes to go around everybody, and it actually really lifts your spirits, because even if you're having a bad week, somebody goes, oh, do you know what happened this week? This parent came in and said something really lovely, and you go, oh, that's great. So that's a real positive thing. And then for the rest of the time, we talk about things that would help the school to move forward, or things that we can do to, perhaps sometimes we've got an event coming up, what can we do to improve on what we did last time? But those people go out and they feel like they have a voice, and anybody is welcome, and that really has made a big difference.
I think that's so powerful. And sometimes, like you said, it's those admin roles or teaching assistants or other roles in school that aren't a class teacher that really do get missed out of things like this. And actually, those people are often the eyes and ears of the school. They know what's going on better than the teachers in a lot of cases. So I think that idea of bringing those people along the journey is really important, and, really supports with developing that kind culture that you talk
Oh,
about.
absolutely.
We have got a few minutes left. If anyone has any more questions, do you just want to pop them in the chat? And if nobody has any more questions, no, all that's left then is to say a really, really big thank you to you, Joanna, for giving up your time to speak to us. I'm sure everyone found it as inspiring as me, and it's given me lots and lots of things to sort of go away and reflect on. Oh, I think we've had just one last question there. Let me have a read. Oh no, that's the same question from before. So thank you, and thank you so much, Joanna. It was really, really fantastic session. I think everyone has learnt loads, and the way you sort of presented your framework was so clear, and it's definitely things that I'm sure lots of us are going to be taking away with us into our practice going forward.
It's a pleasure. Just be kind.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Joanna, for joining us. Thank you, Ruby, for hosting for Women Ed today. And thank you for everybody who joined in. Just a quick note before we go. We are starting Women Ed Men's mentoring program, just to link to Joanna's kindness and contributions and what we can do to spread the kindness. So we put some notices on our Women Ed platform and also in our Women WhatsApp groups. You can reach out to either myself, Nalini, Ruby, anyone who's part of the Women in Leadership. So please do reach out or check out the LinkedIn pages as well for any more information. We put the links on there as well. So thank you so much. But yeah, Joanna, I think the message is spread the kindness, spread the love. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you.